Do you hear about that fucking object that's hurtling towards Earth at like 130,000 miles an hour?
No, that might solve all our problems.
Some intergalactic object.
When something defies every law we thought we understood, when velocity shifts without cause and trajectories bend without reason, we're forced to ask something far more unsettling. What could this possibly be? It started as a whisper in the data, a microscopic inconsistency that shouldn't have mattered. Orbital tracking stations worldwide noticed the same impossible thing within hours of each other. The interstellar visitor designated 3I Atlas, traveling on what should have been a perfectly predictable path, had done something no natural object should ever do. Its velocity increased. Not gradually, not incrementally, but violently, as if invisible hands had reached across the void and pushed. Space is full of movement. Comets accelerate when solar radiation heats their frozen surfaces, releasing gas jets that function like natural rocket engines. Standard physics. Understood mechanics, except 3I Atlas was nowhere near close enough to the Sun for that explanation to hold any weight. The readings showed velocity increasing by nearly 20% within a single observation window. No debris plume, no outgassing signature, just clean, precise acceleration, faster and more controlled than anything in recorded astronomical history. Instrument error, the astrophysicists said at first. Then the European Southern Observatory confirmed it. The James Webb Space Telescope confirmed it. Ground arrays across 3 continents confirmed identical readings. The comfortable explanation evaporated. This wasn't measurement failure. The acceleration was real, measurable, undeniable. The object's trajectory had flattened slightly, adjusting its course as though guided by intention rather than cosmic chance. For scientists accustomed to the predictable ballet of celestial mechanics, this behavior was profoundly disturbing. The acceleration pattern matched neither solar gravity nor sublimation thrust. It was uniform across multiple axes, displaying the kind of smooth, controlled motion you'd expect from engineered propulsion systems, not wandering space rocks. Within hours, the news spread like wildfire. YouTube channels exploded with theories. Podcasts dissected every data point. The phrase that kept appearing in official documents sent chills through anyone who remembered. Non-gravitational acceleration. The exact same terminology used for Oumuamua, that first interstellar visitor, that rewrote our assumptions about what travels between the stars. Atlas wasn't just moving through space anymore. It was choosing to move. The argument split the scientific world down the middle. On one side stood the traditionalists, astrophysicists determined to explain every anomaly through conventional physics. On the other side stood scientists like Harvard's Avi Loeb, who looked at this motion and saw something impossible to reconcile with natural comet behavior. Something deliberate, something controlled. Official reports described the velocity increase as non-gravitational acceleration, likely associated with volatile outgassing activity. Except infrared imagery showed no trace of sublimated gas, no dust tails. Surface temperature remained far below the threshold, where water ice, carbon dioxide, or even ammonia would vaporize. The object was cold, completely inert and somehow still accelerating. Joe Rogan dedicated an entire segment to the phenomenon, drawing parallels to Oumuamua, that cigar-shaped mystery exhibiting the same unexplained energy signature. Movement without visible propulsion. Acceleration without fuel. Direction without apparent cause. Conservative astronomers attributed it to radiation pressure, sunlight gently nudging an extremely light structure. Loeb countered that such a model required 3I Atlas to be almost weightless, more like a sheet of paper than a rock. An interstellar sail designed to harvest starlight for propulsion. The idea seemed absurd until the data fit perfectly. But something deeper began unsettling researchers. The acceleration pattern wasn't random. It followed discrete intervals, increasing and then stabilizing in repeating 9-hour phases. The object behaved less like drifting cosmic debris and more like a machine responding to programmed commands. When researchers overlaid weeks of observation data, the behavior revealed structure far too organized to be coincidental. Every 9 hours, velocity increased fractionally, plateaued, then reset. Each pulse followed a symmetrical curve, identical in duration and amplitude every single time. Natural objects never move this way. Solar radiation acts continuously, not rhythmically. Outgassing produces chaotic spurts, inconsistent in direction and force. But 3i Atlas moved as though driven by an internal clock, its trajectory altering with the precision of a guidance computer. Modeling. Teams from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory and the European Space Agency began running simulations, using software designed to analyze spacecraft propulsion. Fed into those frameworks, the pattern matched almost perfectly with low-frequency plasma discharge, a propulsion system capable of generating continuous thrust over extended durations. Further analysis revealed another disturbing detail. The object's rotational orientation shifted slightly during each acceleration pulse, correcting itself with uncanny precision. The movement resembled course stabilization, the kind of automatic adjustment spacecraft use to maintain trajectory alignment. Astrophysicists called it dynamic equilibrium adjustment. Others saw it clearly as intentional control, evidence the object was responding to gravitational influences in real time. Even the optical data carried anomalies. Brightness increased before every acceleration phase, then dimmed immediately afterward, as though heat was being generated and then efficiently radiated away. Evidence of an internal system actively managing its own energy budget. While acceleration patterns captured headlines, it was the object's spectral signature that caused genuine alarm. Using the James Webb Space Telescope and ground-based infrared arrays, scientists scanned its surface, expecting standard cometry elements, frozen water, carbon monoxide, silicate dust. What they discovered fit no known profile in our astronomical databases. The first shock was metallic reflectivity across multiple wavelengths. 3i Atlas exhibited mirror-like return patterns, suggesting large portions of its surface were composed of refined metals or high-albedo composites. That level of uniform reflectance is impossible for natural comets, whose surfaces should be darkened by organic carbon and cosmic dust. The brightness remained stable over time, indicating no tumbling debris. Just smooth, consistent texture. Then came the thermal paradox. Despite proximity to sunlight, the object's temperature didn't rise proportionally. Instead, heat output fluctuated independently of solar exposure, rising sharply during each acceleration pulse and cooling just as quickly. Infrared charts displayed spikes resembling controlled energy discharges, bursts completely unlinked to sunlight or natural sublimation. Even stranger were traces of nickel vapor and carbon dioxide surrounding the object. Those elements don't coexist naturally at the observed ratios. Nickel requires thousands of degrees to vaporize, while CO2 sublimates at extremely low temperatures. The combination implied alternating cycles of intense heat and near cryogenic cold, impossible for any static celestial body. When Webb's spectroscopy team compared readings to known propulsion exhaust signatures, they noticed disturbing similarities. Nickel vapors are byproducts of plasma thruster alloys used in experimental spacecraft engines. The faint CO2 presence could indicate a cooling system or exhaust mechanism. The data pointed toward technology, or something behaving as if technological. Internal documents began classifying the object's spectral data as non-standard. Observatories tightened data access. Raw images disappeared from public archives without explanation. By the time 3i Atlas crossed Mars's orbital path, something happened that defied every simulation. For months it had been steadily accelerating toward the inner solar system, but on October 3rd, data from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory and ESA's Gaia system registered an abrupt velocity reversal. Forward speed decreased dramatically, then plateaued as if invisible brakes had been applied against gravity itself. Natural deceleration doesn't occur this way. Yet 3i Atlas slowed in free space, far from any mass capable of altering its trajectory. The deceleration occurred over just 12 hours, a maneuver so deliberate it appeared engineered. Orbital reconstructions revealed something critical. The object's vector turned slightly off-plane, avoiding Mars's gravity well by a margin of only 0.03 degrees. Such precision demands real-time navigation. At its velocity, even 1/10 that deviation could have resulted in catastrophic gravitational capture. Instead, 3i Atlas executed what flight engineers would call a textbook course correction, movement indistinguishable from active control. The maneuver was accompanied by a transient thermal surge. Instruments recorded temperature spikes reaching nearly 4,000 Kelvin across a localized point on the leading surface. No visible flare, no debris cloud, just a clean energy spike and immediate stabilization. Days later, 3I Atlas resumed acceleration on a modified trajectory, placing it on a near-collision course with Jupiter's orbital plane before veering outward again. The Mars maneuver shattered whatever consensus remained. The mainstream position insisted sublimation or outgassing was responsible despite complete absence of vapor trails, but this theory collapsed under scrutiny. Energy output required for the velocity change was thousands of times greater than any natural venting could produce. Alternative theories spread faster. Some proposed 3I Atlas wasn't a comet at all, but an ancient probe, a remnant of interstellar technology built by long-extinct civilizations. The pattern of controlled acceleration and deceleration matched artificial thrust signatures seen in ion drive simulations. Others suggested it might be a fragment of a Dyson-type construct, self-regulating machinery powered by absorbed starlight. Avi Loeb's earlier work on Oumuamua had introduced possibilities that interstellar objects could be engineered sails, technological relics drifting between stars. His arguments, once dismissed, resurfaced with renewed credibility. Observatories reanalyzed archived data from Oumuamua and 2I Borisov, comparing motion patterns. The similarities were undeniable. But 3I Atlas's movements were far more deliberate. When James Webb turned its golden mirrors toward 3I Atlas, the data reshaped everything again. Images filtered through mid-infrared analysis revealed alternating heat bands across the surface, concentric patterns equidistant and symmetrical, rotating in perfect sync with the 9-hour periodic acceleration. Each thermal band radiated at different intensity, as though specific regions were activating and deactivating in programmed cycles. For any natural body, such uniform distribution was physically impossible. Spectral analysis deepened the mystery. Instead of broad peaks typical of natural minerals, emissions formed sharp, discrete line signatures, usually associated with refined alloys or crystalline structures. The reflectance curve matched no known asteroid, comet, or meteorite catalogued by NASA or ESA. During the 36th hour of observation, Webb sensors detected a flash, a brief but intense surge in infrared radiation from the equatorial region. The spike lasted only 4 seconds, but was powerful enough to saturate detectors, forcing automatic cooldown. In that moment, apparent brightness increased tenfold before returning to baseline almost instantly. When analysts recalculated velocity afterward, they found another minor increase. A fresh acceleration burst consistent with propulsion activation. The energy pattern was unlike any natural phenomenon recorded in astrophysics. The object pulsed energy in controlled intervals, storing and releasing it with mechanical precision. Webb telescope results were quietly removed from public databases within days. Official summaries listed instrumental anomalies under review, but archived data stored by independent networks confirmed the event unambiguously. After James Webb recorded its final pulse from 3I Atlas, the global scientific community entered observational panic. Data streams stable for months began failing across every major observatory worldwide. One by one, instruments tracking the interstellar object went dark. Signal loss began with low-frequency radio telescopes. Within hours, every radio observatory on Earth reported identical problems. Total signal absence within 3I Atlas coordinates. The region became a blank zone in the electromagnetic spectrum. Not static, not distortion, but complete removal of measurable radiation. Even background cosmic microwave radiation vanished from that region. Infrared sensors followed. The object, once glowing faintly, cooled rapidly, or more accurately, masked its own thermal emission completely. Albedo collapsed by nearly 80%. What once reflected light now absorbed it totally. The object's radiant profile flattened to absolute black. Magnetometers aboard Mars orbiters and deep space probes detected faint pulses at 9-hour intervals, identical to previous acceleration rhythms. These pulses were purely magnetic, invisible to telescopes yet perfectly periodic. It was the only remaining trace, a heartbeat pulsing through the void. Attempts to restore observation failed. The signal blackout moved with the object, expanding, forming a tail of electromagnetic silence trailing millions of kilometers behind. No radar ping returned, no telescope image resolved. Within NASA and ESA, internal documents began referring to it as the Atlas Null Zone, a self-generated cloaking field beyond any theoretical capability. Public updates called it temporary signal disruption. But unredacted logs described something unprecedented. Object entered self-occluded state. All energy emissions below detectable threshold. Magnetic resonance remains synchronized, sustained, intentional. For the first time since discovery, Atlas had not only accelerated beyond explanation, it had vanished from every instrument humanity designed to perceive the cosmos. Yet every 9 hours, planetary magnetospheres faintly pulsed in response, as though something unseen still echoed across the solar system. In following weeks, the blackout expanded beyond the object's trajectory. Interference began affecting outer planetary probes, disrupting long-range communication arrays, flickering through deep space frequency bands used for interstellar mapping. Then, on a clear midnight in early November, the faint magnetic pulse stopped. No residual magnetism, no radiation, no trace. The corridor of silence closed behind it. The official record now lists 3I Atlas as unrecoverable, presumed outbound beyond detection range. But for those who studied its final days, that phrasing feels incomplete. Because things that drift naturally through space fade gradually. They don't shut themselves off with such precision. If acceleration was its first signal to humanity, then silence became its last message, and somewhere beyond Jupiter's orbit, an object once visible to every telescope on Earth had accomplished something no comet or human-made machine ever had. It chose to disappear,